Went to a Professor Peterson event a few days ago. I told him he was a pretty good wizard, a person who changes the world around them via verbal and semantic components, i.e. their words and actions. Well, the Memes of Destruction, which is a great username. That's really nerdy, but I approve.
Well. The game continues, it appears. My apologies for my slight delay, and I've been lazy, but we all know these things happen, especially in regards to the internet. But I digress. It appears that Mr. The Plague has done a response video to my response video. Thereby, according to the rules of the internet, I must respond to his video. Let's get into it.
Hello, everybody. It is I, Mr. The Plague. Once again, Mr. Memes has chosen to continue his game. Of course, at the moment, he is more interested in playing checkers rather than playing chess. We will not do... Oh, Harpy, what are you doing, Harpy? No, Harpy, don't do this. Harpy, oh no. Harpy has called her sisters. We must put an end to this.
Alright then. Come forth, Time Wizard! What the... Carry on.
No, Harpy. Back to the home. Don't bring your sisters in. Very well now that Harpy is put away. Let's take a look at what Memes has to say, shall we?
Universal truth number 8. 80% of statistics are BS. The reason I used something in concept was to communicate the concept. Sometimes we need to brush off vanity and show reality. I acknowledge what the chart shows, and there are, in my opinion, valid reasons that I'll touch on later. From a leftist standpoint, I see a large amount of right-of-center Republicans here, so, which by its distribution, for me, would mean that there are more far-right individuals, no?
Okay, Mr. Memes. Let's refer to a few things there. You made a claim, right here, that the reason you showed the graph was to, quote-unquote, prove a concept. We know this, however, to be inaccurate. Now, why am I making such a claim? Because you weren't just satisfied with making a comment of this is a graph as an explanation for an example. You made the claim that most people were in the middle, trying to indicate that most people were in the middle of this debate. This is hardly true, Mr. Memes. It's nowhere close. Let's continue for just a little bit longer, shall we?
Pause. Now, it's not like anyone, just for the ease of going about their day or to avoid any potential conflict, may potentially agree with something that they may or may not fully support. I mean, like, if that was the case, I mean, there may actually be a number of folks out there that ended up voting for President Trump who may not have indicated via standard polling or just in standard conversation because they didn't necessarily want to be attacked per se or have what their particular decision challenged. And I mean, it's not like there'd be any particular data or something to try to back things up like this. So I mean, it's not like, oh, what's this here? It's this is apparently from Pew. Links in the description down below, but apparently most people vote, but other forms of participation are much less common. This was actually done in 14 nations, not including the US. We need to make sure that's clear. But apparently they had a median of about 78% say they have voted at least one of the past, one election within the past, again. So, again, this is a rough sample, but it does tend to show that there is a high voter participation rate. I believe Brazil, Argentina, and Greece, according to this article, says they do have compulsory voting. However, we do also see extremely high voting within the Philippines, as well as Indonesia. And, I mean, yes, are there a number of issues going on within those countries? Absolutely, but they do not have compulsory voting. And they do seem to have extremely high political engagement as well. I mean, even down here, Tunisia has approximately 62%. And we must not forget Mohamed Bouazizi, who was the fruit vendor who ended up self-immolating due to what he felt was just gross injustice. So, I mean, aside from that right there, we also have over here, okay, so apparently within the United States, approximately 56% of the U.S. voting age population cast ballots as well. I believe when you actually break down the numbers of registered voters and folks that voted in the past 2016 election, I believe it was approximately an 80% participation rate. However, out of total eligible voters, basically United States citizens of the age of majority within these individual states and commonwealths, that seems to be lower than Tunisia. And again, there's going to be some error in then how it's exactly compared. Yeah, that's fine, but it's just we're supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. I truly believe that, and it's just I feel like if more people were actively engaged, paying attention, which I do think more and more folks are for whatever particular reason may drive them, if folks do start paying attention, I do think we can actually move forward for this. And I mean, again, it's not like people are disengaging for particular reasons. What those particular reasons may be, I mean, it's not like there's something that before, back in the day, you say something at the pub, somebody disagrees with you, they kind of guffaw at you. I mean, it's not like social media has astronomically been on the rise over the past 15 years. Oh, what's this? Oh, so if people are actively utilizing social media and part of their lives are now online as well, if they happen to say something of social media, I mean, we all know that rule 2 of the internet is forever. They may potentially feel that they may be attacked, judged, which may or may not be fair, or even excommunicated from certain groups for expressing a particular belief. And I have seen this on many different sides within many different communities as well. Doesn't necessarily encompass everyone, probably not. But I don't know, man, Mr. P. These do seem like factors that might go into reasons why. I don't know. Maybe there are more folks in the middle. Maybe they're just not expressing those views out of expediency. I don't know. Let's go on.
Going back to one-upsmanship, would it mean a likely response just from the other side? Just kind of, would that not explain some of the shift here? I don't know.
Now, Mr. Means, we know that this is not accurate. We know this isn't just one-upsmanship as you would like it to be. There are relevant factors and relevant reasons why this is going on. If there's a game of one-upmanship taking place, then fine. What are your valid reasons? Please elucidate. I have asked this repeatedly. What are the valid reasons for the one-upmanship? Please explain this to us all if you would. We are waiting. You've given me no reason, especially valid reasons for claiming that there is one-upmanship, Mr. Means. Come on now. You should be doing better than that, don't you think? But I digress, don't I?
Right.
Let's take another look at another sequence that you responded with, shall we?
Mr. P, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just that It seems that there was a remarkable shift to the left from between.
You get what I'm saying? No, Mr. Memes. You totally missed the point. You totally missed the point of this graph. Read what this graph is about. Political polarization in the House over time. This was a graph showing leadership. I know this is a foreign concept for you. This isn't something that comes naturally to you. But this is a graph of who the left is choosing as their leaders, Mr. Memes. And it shows that the people on the right aren't drifting to the right per se, as much as the left is choosing further and further leftist extremists, more and more extremists on the left. Not so much on the right. It's remaining close to the same that it's been. But you ignore this fact. You ignore this central core. Who's the chosen leadership here, Mr. Memes? This is the problem. This is one of the major problems that I see, and I have mentioned this to you on previous occasions.
Right. My apologies for not being more concise. If people think the President of the United States is the Cheeto Führer, if that's something that I personally thought as well, I mean, I'd probably be in the streets wearing a mask too.
But there's more, isn't there, Memes?
A wise man once said, "It's the economy, stupid." What do I mean by that? So if we take a look at the shift to the left, we must ask ourselves why this may have happened. What happened around 2010 that may have led some folks towards more progressive politics? Now, like, wasn't there a housing crash and a recession or something? I remember something about President Obama taking the oath of office and, like, the economy was cycling 750,000 jobs a month or something like that. Maybe I'm misremembering, but people were hurting.
Yes, Mr. Memes. People were hurting. And yes, Mr. Memes, you are misremembering what happened. Take a look at 2010. Put your thinking cap on. What had happened? First of all, let's go back just a wee bit further, shall we? What did you have happen in 2006? Oh, what you had was the House taken over by the Democrats. And then you had the Senate and the presidency won by President Barack Hussein Obama. That was all before 2010. What did you have happen between 2006 and in 2010? Why, the very recession that you're referring to. Funny how what you have happen and what takes place over time, isn't it, Mr. Memes? How the economic slide begins when the Democrats get power in the House. Correlation? Causation? Perhaps, perhaps not. Blame, certainly. And what was the result? The result was Barack Obama instantly coming in and doing, first of all, a stimulus package for the shovel-ready jobs. You know, the shovel-ready jobs that weren't so shovel-ready in his opinion a few years later. The shovel-ready jobs that basically were a handout to the unions so that they could then turn around and fill the DNC coffers. Yes, I remember this, Mr. Memes. Do you? And then 2010. People were still hurting and they were upset because of the grand scheme that Obama had worked on since 2008, which wasn't what people wanted, the economy. No, Mr. Memes. What he was working on was his grand utopian healthcare revision, where everything in healthcare would be placed under the direction of the federal government. And then what happened? You had an election in 2010, didn't you, Mr. Memes? And in that election, Mr. Memes, what did you see? You saw the rise of the Tea Party. You saw the rise of a grassroots movement to reject Obama's policies. Yes, Mr. Memes, You have a very flawed memory. You don't remember anything about what was really going on during that time, apparently. And when they lost control of the house again, that's when things got nasty. Very nasty. Led once again by the doyle on the left, Barack Hussein Obama. Right, Mr. Means? Do you remember this now? Remember, as the member berries go? Do you really remember what you think you remember? Or is it a convenient excuse?
I'm gonna save this one for the end if y'all don't mind.
You had a slipping of the Senate continuously after that. And yes, Barack Obama was reelected. But that slide shows that there was a push by the leadership. You know, the leadership that was elected, that was shown on the previous graph? Do you remember, Mr. Memes? Or do you misremember because of how you want to see things? You'll rearrange history to be convenient for your viewpoint. You won't actually look at history. Perhaps you think I'm an old, doddering fool who doesn't remember. Now, let's go to your final commentary that I wish to respond to, shall we, Mr. Memes?
When does life begin? I don't know. I'm not God. But if I was going to use how the way I see it, and just my personal life experience, I mean, I personally tend to agree with Joe Biden, looking at it from an old school point that...
Now, Mr. Memes, I'm not going to go into any of your serious discussion. Yes, we all make mistakes. We all have issues. We all have our own foibles. We put roadblocks oftentimes in our own way without even realizing it, and then have to overcome those obstacles that we imposed on ourselves. But that's the point, Mr. Memes. We're putting obstacles in our own way. We don't need help from an overarching federal government. And this discussion doesn't really do what you need to do, because the left is still moving further to the left. You have to admit that they're not interested in having a dialogue. Their only interest is in power. They're not interested in helping people. Their only interest is themselves. You have yet to come to terms with this. You have yet to take a realistic view of who they are. MC, you say they are not the kind of people that you think that they might be, Mr. Bloodplague? No, most people are good, correct? Yes, I do believe that. But people are also easily misled and manipulated by their emotions very, very easily. All you have to do is take a look at the dynamics between men and women to understand this. Both good and bad.
As someone who may or may not have worked within corporate sales for upwards of the past decade, it's well known that someone isn't going to invest $10, $20, $30, $50,000 in a project utilizing logic with somebody that they just met a couple of hours ago. No, you need to take them along on an emotional roller coaster. However, building upon the fact that we do agree that most folks are good people, what I would say to what was happening between 2005 and 2015 is we're starting to see the rise of other things that we had discussed previously, which is the utilization of social media because of its mass deployment, as well as mobile technology bandwidth, as well as data transfer capacity, as well as the reduction in cost of storage in and of itself. So what I see as this is that, yeah, that's literally another method of social conformity as well, because now we're taking our standard interactions and applying them online. And if we take a quick look at some additional information brought to us by Pule, links of course in the description down below, it seems those in higher incomes households tend to lead their way with their usage of social media as well. Okay, so what would that mean? Typically you tend to see, and again not always, a lot of wealth typically concentrated within a lot of cities. Okay, so, and a lot of cities tend to be more progressive. Okay, this would seem to explain some of those things. But now, are there additional components here? Let's take a look at another intersect, if you would. Okay, it seems like the racial differences as far as ancestry of folks, it seems to be fairly negligible. I mean, you can see along the trend. I mean, it's pretty much the same for a good number of years there. So, I mean, if that doesn't really seem to be an issue, what else could be going on here as well? So let's take a look. And as we see here, it seems like rural citizens have lagged behind. They, again, according to the first one, if those who have the most wealth tend to be the trendsetters, if they happen to be more progressive areas, that would explain a lot of this. And now we're starting to see folks in more rural, very often more conservative areas as well, starting to utilize it. Well, if you have established many folks that happen to be more progressive, and you have folks that are now joining, I mean, it's not like we ever did that little experiment back in kindergarten with the little plastic volcanoes and the baking sodas and the vinegars, and except now American citizens are hating, hurting, and killing our fellow Americans over politics. I don't know, man. All I know is we really shouldn't judge an individual just for some of their tangential contact on social media. If someone just happens to retweet a statement and all of a sudden, whoa, this was from this particular person here, and they've said terrible things this many years ago and everything, it's like, all right, if we're down to about 4.2 degrees of separation between everyone on the planet, it's like there's a pretty good chance that the folks we come in contact with, I don't know, I think at this point we all have cooties. Moving along.
Regardless, Mr. Memes, wishful thinking doesn't fix things. Any more than Barack Hussein Obama was able to fix the economy. No, and in fact, his policies didn't fix the economy, they just exacerbated the pain. Things didn't get better, they stayed where they were. And before you come back and go, well, wait a minute, Mr. P. Wait a minute, Mr. P. I know that the unemployment rate dropped under Barack Hussein Obama. No, Mr. Memes. It didn't. And in fact, the total number of people not working reached an all-time high in the country and didn't go down until he left office. Think on that, Mr. Memes.
Well, as someone who was unemployed between 2008 and 2009, I did that by choice after being laid off. I mean, I had money in the bank, I wasn't actively looking for employment for several months, right as the economy was going off a cliff. I was on unemployment in 2009, and I remember them telling me, just fill out this form and call this number every Monday or Tuesday. Cool. And as I was searching for employment, as the benefits require, I found an actual place that was willing to employ me, and after going over basically approximately what I would make in travel expenses, because, you know, having a V8 Explorer at that time wasn't the greatest as far as fuel economy goes. But when I looked at it, I'm like, wait a second, I'm going to be working and making less money than I would be should I not take employment here. And I remember thinking, gee, no wonder people don't want to work. And this is something that I've heard from both folks on the left and on the right, that we need major reform to our welfare benefits system. That's the thing. It's like if somebody's in need, they're in a tough and rough spot within their life, it's like, okay, you've paid into the system. The system is there to assist you to become self-sustaining again. It's just very often we have it that as soon as you start to earn something, you start to lose the benefit. So now you're only maybe just able to maintain what you have, whereas if it was a graduated wean off there over so many weeks, so many months or so, perhaps, maybe, just maybe, somebody could actually save up enough money to purchase a vehicle so that maybe they could expand their potential employment horizons, or even save up enough money that maybe they could get an apartment or a place of their own and try to actually establish themselves within the community and build their life. And just, this is something that I truly believe that we can accomplish. We just need to get over ourselves and do it.
Furthermore, the left is becoming more and more deranged, and yet you're fixated on pointing out the problems in the right. I have mentioned this before. The far right is contained by the right. Why? Because it's easy enough for them to contain it. Furthermore, they're not allowing them to grow larger because they understand who they are. The left, on the other hand, now is at the point where everyone who disagrees with them is automatically an extremist. Even you. You want to have a conversation with them. Oh, they may have a conversation with you because you're easily duped and misled by your emotions, sir. Perhaps what you need to start focusing on is demanding that they, on the left, come to terms with their derangements and start looking at the world as it really is, rather than the farce that you think it is. I've taken up enough of your time, good people. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. P. I look forward to more civil discourse with you, but as I promised earlier, let's just go back to your earlier comment, and may I present my response.
And then what happened? You had an election in 2010, didn't you, Mr. Memes? And in that election, Mr. Memes, what did you see? You saw the rise of the Tea Party. You saw the rise of a grassroots movement to reject Obama's policies. Yes, Mr. Memes, you have a very flawed memory. You don't remember anything about what was really going on during that time, apparently. And when they lost control of the House again, that's when things got nasty. Very nasty. Led once again by the doyen on the left, Barack Hussein Obama. Right, Mr. Memes? Do you remember this now? Remember? As the memory varies down. Do you really remember what you think you remember? Or is it a convenient excuse?
About AIG, outrageous. The insurance giant says it had no choice but to dole out multi-million-dollar bonuses despite getting billions of your taxpayer bailout dollars.
Our employees, despite getting $170 billion in government bailout money.
We're the first people to be angry, so absolutely Secretary Geithner has been furious.
Our assistance comes with appropriately tough conditions on compensation to senior executives.
$1,100 pages, not one member of this body has read. Not one.
It's going to, incent what we need to happen and make sure that taxpayer dollars are not going to benefit those senior executives in ways that don't make sense.
The New York Federal Reserve would not have been privy to any of this information, which, by the way, was circulating between the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and the New York Fed. Well, the American people are not that stupid.
I can't point a finger at someone who was responsible for altering the language that put that states in. We agreed to some modification at the time.
What happened to the promise that we're going to let the American people see what's in this bill for 48 hours? But no.
History happened yesterday. The Fed announced that it is going to pump $1 trillion into the system by buying debt from our Treasury. There it is, $100 bill. Next, $10,000. What does that look like stacked up in $100 bills? There it is. Now $1 million stacked up in $100 bills. Now $100 million. $1 billion. This is going to get ugly. This is what $1 trillion looks like.
How big has the national debt become? So big it's threatening to outgrow the landmark National Debt Clock in New York City.
The truth, Prime Minister, is that you have run out of our money. The country as a whole is now in negative equity. Every British child is born owing around £20,000. Servicing the interest on that debt is going to cost more than educating the child.